Good evening, George Will here. Breaking news tonight. In a development that signals the accelerating institutional collapse of the Sussex communications apparatus, Meghan Markle's 11th public relations chief in 5 years has tendered her resignation, and she has not done so alone. The departures cascading out of Archewell Philanthropies in the final days of 2025 are not a reshuffling, not a strategic pivot, not a routine transition between campaigns. According to multiple independent sources speaking to Page Six, the Times of London, the Daily Mail, and the Mercury News, senior communications professionals who built their reputations at Google, Netflix, and Lightspeed Venture Partners are walking away from the Duchess of Sussex and declining to place her name on their professional resumes afterward. That detail alone tells you everything you need to understand about what is actually happening inside Camp Sussex. When the professionals whose entire career is built on rehabilitating reputations refuse to list their time with your organization as a career credential, the investigation into why is not merely a matter of royal gossip. It is a matter of institutional accountability. What you are about to hear tonight constitutes the most comprehensive accounting of the Sussex communications crisis yet assembled, sourced from court-adjacent financial filings with the Internal Revenue Service, multiple credentialed public relations experts, and on-record statements from individuals who survived what insiders have formally dubbed the Sussex Survivors Club. If you are new to this channel, subscribe now and activate your notifications because this investigation does not end tonight. The evidence trail we are following leads somewhere far more consequential than a staffing announcement. Stay with us. The credibility architecture underlying this report rests on 5 independent evidentiary streams that corroborate each other across jurisdictions and publication standards. First, IRS filed financial disclosures for Archewell Philanthropies, obtained by the Daily Mail, which are public documents subject to federal penalty for material misrepresentation. Second, on-record statements from a minimum of 3 named public relations experts, including Doug Eldridge, founder of Achilles PR, and royal commentator Hilary Fordwich, whose professional reputations are directly staked to the accuracy of their assessments. Third, contemporaneous reporting from Page Six, the Times of London, The Sun, and People magazine, 4 independent publications across 2 continents whose editorial standards require source verification. Fourth, the departure statements issued by the subjects themselves, which, when examined against insider sourcing, reveal a systematic disparity between official language and documented workplace reality. And fifth, and this is the category that should arrest your attention, or the LinkedIn omission pattern. Multiple departing Sussex communications professionals have declined to list their time at Archewell on their professional profiles. In the communications industry, where every credential matters, that omission is not an accident. It is a calculation. Here is where the evidence becomes, to use a legal formulation, probative. The categorical breakdown of what is driving these departures falls along 5 distinct fault lines, each of which independently constitutes a management failure of documented severity. The first category is behavioral toxicity, and the documentation here is specific. Sources speaking to The Hollywood Reporter in September 2025 stated in direct quotation that, and this is the language used, everyone's terrified of Meghan. She belittles people. She doesn't take advice. A second source in the same report added verbatim, she marches around like a dictator in high heels. I've watched her reduce grown men to tears. These statements were made to one of the most legally cautious entertainment publications in the United States, whose editorial review process requires rigorous source verification before such characterizations are published. Buckingham Palace, it should be noted, launched its own internal investigation into workplace bullying allegations against the Duchess, an investigation whose findings, as of this broadcast, have never been publicly released. The second category is what industry professionals term client non-compliance, the documented pattern of ignoring professional counsel. Royal photographer Helena Chard, speaking to Fox News Digital, stated with precision, "A communications strategy only works if all parties adhere to the plan." She continued, "There are murmurs of Meghan and Harry not following advice given by experts." When the Duchess attended Paris Fashion Week in October 2025 and posted an Instagram video showing herself being driven at night along the Seine, the precise route traveled by Princess Diana on the night she died, her own communications team was reportedly blindsided. That is not a PR failure attributable to the publicist. That is a client circumventing the professional infrastructure they are simultaneously paying to manage them. The third category is strategic incoherence, and the Kardashian Photogate incident constitutes the most crystallizing example in recent memory. On November 8, 2025, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle attended the 70th birthday party of Kris Jenner at the Beverly Hills compound owned by Jeff Bezos and Lauren Sanchez, a property valued at $175 million. The guest list included Kim Kardashian, Jay-Z, Beyoncé, Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, and Tyler Perry. The couple appeared willingly, and photographs were taken and posted publicly by the Kardashian family. Within days, according to page 6, the Sussex communications team contacted the Kardashians and requested that every photograph featuring the Duke and Duchess be removed from Instagram. The stated rationale was that the images might, quote, piss off the royal family while reconciliation efforts were underway. The result, the photos were deleted, the deletion was noticed, the reasoning was reported in global media, and the Kardashian family was, by multiple accounts, left irritated at having their matriarch's celebration overshadowed. Chief Communications Officer Meredith Maines, Stanford graduate, former Google and Hulu executive, holder of an immaculate professional pedigree, resigned shortly thereafter. An insider told page 6 the Kardashian fiasco was the final straw. The fourth category is financial deterioration so severe it qualifies as institutional distress. IRS filings for Archewell Philanthropies, these are not leaked documents, these are required federal disclosures, show that revenue from contributions and grants collapsed to $2.1 million in 2024, down from $5.3 million the prior year. Simultaneously, expenses climbed to $5.1 million, with only $1.2 million directed toward actual grant disbursements to external organizations. The operational burn rate exceeded incoming revenue by $3 million in a single fiscal year. In December 2025, 60% of Archewell's staff was let go in a single week, reducing the organization to effectively 2 employees. The couple's spokesperson characterized these terminations as, quote, inevitable. The fifth category is the departure acceleration pattern itself, which Douglas Eldridge, founder of Achilles PR, characterized to Fox News Digital with clinical precision. In virtually any context other than the final months of an outgoing administration, losing 5 senior-level comms advisors inside of a year is a bit abnormal. Royal commentator Hilary Fordwich was considerably less restrained, stating that the departures represent undeniable confirmation that Harry and Meghan are unmanageably high maintenance, and identifying the couple as the common denominator in this dysfunctional situation. The chronological reconstruction of this pattern removes any basis for characterizing these departures as coincidental. January 2025. Meredith Maines hired as Chief Communications Officer. Method Communications retained as external agency. February 2025, Vanity Fair publishes its cover investigation headlined American Hustle, Reviving Documented Bullying Allegations. April 2025, the lifestyle brand is renamed As Ever after trademark complications derail the original American Riviera Orchard identity. June 2025, Kyle Boulia, U.S.-based Deputy Press Secretary, and Charlie Gibson, European Communications Director, both depart simultaneously following what insiders describe as a blame-driven internal purge. July 2025, Maines travels to London and convenes a private meeting with Tobin Andrea, King Charles's Director of Communications at a Mayfair Members Club, a meeting photographed by paparazzi and published in a Sunday newspaper within days, to the frustration of both camps. September 2025, Harry meets King Charles for tea at Clarence House, the first direct contact in 19 months. September 2025, The Hollywood Reporter publishes its damaging sourced portrait of Meghan as a client who reduces grown men to tears. October 2025, Emily Robinson, a Netflix senior director of publicity for 8 years who had worked on The Crown, departs after 4 months in the director of communications role. She declines to list her Sussex tenure on LinkedIn. A friend tells the Daily Mail she's not a quitter, so things must have been pretty horrible for her to go. November 8, 2025, the Kris Jenner birthday party and subsequent photogate. December 21, 2025, 60% of Archewell staff dismissed. December 26, 2025, Meredith Maines and Method Communications both formally exit. December 29, 2025, James Holt, the couple's longest-serving aide, 8 years, announces his departure. January 2026, Sunshine Sachs Morgan and Lilas, the celebrity crisis management firm that first represented Meghan during her Suits years and sent its co-president to their 2018 wedding, is quietly rehired in what the Telegraph confirms is a return engagement driven by acute communications need. 12 communications professionals in 5 years, 6 in 2025 alone. The legal and institutional consequences of this trajectory are not theoretical. Under the regulations governing nonprofit organizations as defined in Internal Revenue Code Section 501(c)(3), an organization that expends $5.1 million against $2.1 million in revenue while directing only $1.2 million to charitable grant recipients, invites IRS scrutiny regarding whether the entity continues to serve a predominantly public rather than private benefit. That is not a speculative assertion. It is the statutory standard applied uniformly. Furthermore, the departure of an organization's entire external communications infrastructure within a condensed period constitutes material reputational risk that prospective corporate partners, brand licensees, and philanthropic donors are trained to weigh in due diligence. Whoever replaces Maines, and no replacement has been named as of this broadcast, will inherit an organization operating at a deficit, a client with a documented pattern of overriding professional counsel, and a media environment primed with sourced negative characterization. 4 outcome scenarios now present themselves with varying degrees of probability. In the first scenario, Meghan Markle accepts the structural discipline that institutional communications professionals require, delegates narrative authority to her incoming team, and enters a period of operational silence that allows Sunshine Sachs to methodically rebuild credibility. This scenario demands the one behavioral modification that every departing publicist has indicated she is constitutionally disinclined to make: sustained deference to external expertise. It is the most strategically sound option and, based on the documented pattern, the least probable. In the second scenario, the couple accelerates their transition toward a purely American celebrity identity, abandoning royal reconciliation entirely, doubling down on the A's Ever brand, and positioning the Sussex story as a simple lifestyle narrative requiring no diplomatic management. This approach trades institutional complexity for personality-driven simplicity, but risks the permanent foreclosure of the royal rehabilitation narrative that has animated their last 2 years of strategic effort. In the third scenario, the departure velocity continues until Sunshine Sachs itself encounters the same client compliance obstacles that have rotated 11 predecessors out of the role, producing a communications void that the couple attempts to fill by managing their own narrative through social media, a strategy documented to generate incidents like the Sen video and the Harper's Bazaar announcement. In the fourth scenario, and Douglas Eldridge's warning about NDAs deserves careful attention here, the accumulation of departed professionals with documented grievances creates the conditions under which a single authenticated insider account, if it penetrates a major publication, becomes the definitive public record. 23 staff members have departed since the 2018 wedding. Each signed non-disclosure agreements. NDAs are contractual instruments, not gag orders, and their enforceability diminishes in proportion to the number of parties holding parallel knowledge. The urgency here is concrete and datable. Archewell Philanthropies is operating without a named chief communications officer as of this evening. Method Communications has concluded its engagement. The couple has returned to a crisis firm whose engagement is confirmed to be active on the A's Ever brand and, quote, efforts specifically in the U.S. The next major public milestone on the Sussex calendar will occur in a communications environment that is, by any professional standard, inadequately staffed and structurally unstable. What we have examined tonight, 11 departures, $3 million in annual operating deficit, 6 senior communications exits in a single calendar year, and a documented pattern of client noncompliance so consistent that professionals with Stanford credentials decline to include it in their professional histories. This constitutes not a personnel story, but a governance story. And governance stories have consequences that personnel stories do not. If you found tonight's investigation substantive, subscribe to this channel now and activate notifications. The next examination we publish will go beyond the communication structure entirely, because the question that none of the departing publicists have been willing to answer publicly is the one that matters most. What precisely were they being asked to say, and why did the evidence behind it not hold? I am George Will. Type collapse in the comments if you believe the Sussex institutional framework is in terminal decline. Type survival if you believe a managed recovery is still structurally possible. And type escalation if you believe the most consequential chapter of this story has not yet been written. The answer to that last question is the subject of our next investigation. I will see you there.